In episode 5, it was the memorial, and Betty finds out that her parents have been keeping secrets from her. And that seems to be the episode that really hits home for her, that she's like living in this like world full of secrets.
Yeah.
How is she going to cope with living with somebody who's a suspect? She believes is a suspect in
Right.
murder.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Betty's parents, Betty's relationship with her parents has always been rocky. And then when she starts kind of digging in deeper into the murder with Jughead, she realizes that maybe her parents aren't as innocent as she thought. And I mean, to begin with, her relationship with them wasn't great to begin with. She doesn't really trust them that much, but now that they're kind of wrapped up in a murder investigation, she definitely distances herself, but she also is amazingly like unbiased, and if her parents do have anything to do with the murder, she is willing to find that out. And she's not willing to sacrifice, her own personal feelings for the sake of solving this murder. Like, she would rather know the truth and know if her parents really do have something to do with it. And in episode 6, that's a big Betty and Polly episode where she kind of finds out what happened to Polly.
With between 3 and 5, I feel like one of the things that you kind of discover is that Betty is now learning that she's been living in kind of a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you've talked about like she didn't have a great relationship with her parents, but
Yeah.
she's just now learning that it's not just that they're kind of mean, but also that they're like actively lying to her.
Right.
How does that kind of change her perspective of them?
Well, I mean, I think throughout season 1 and even filming episode 13 right now, that is still a very big topic of, of Betty's whole plot. And her whole storyline is she feels like she's stuck in this town that is just so incredibly full of secrets and like a dystopia, and no one talks about it and no one confronts the fact that everyone's lying to each other. And Betty kind of takes it upon herself to expose the truth to the town, and you see that in our season finale. But seeing, sorry, you said her parents.
Talking about the way that it changes her perspective on them, that they've been lying to her.
Right. Okay, yeah. I mean, when Betty kind of realizes that her parents are actively lying to her and keeping things from her, it just makes her more motivated to find out the truth. And I think you see Betty's determination and search for the truth just is constantly being amped up throughout season 1 with each episode. She has more and more motivation to get to the bottom of this and find out why her parents are lying to her. And she's, like I said, she's willing to sacrifice her own personal relationships with her family in order to find out the truth. And if her parents do have something to do with the murder, then she's willing to expose that truth for the sake of solving the mystery.
In the comic books, Betty has a fun interaction with the character Trev, who we're meeting in the coming weeks. Does that translate onto the show as well?
Trev, for right now, is only in episode 3 and 5. And Betty kind of teams up with him a little bit to get a little bit more information about Jason and Polly, because Trev was on the water polo team with Jason, or the football team, and but as of right now, Trev is not a huge part of our season 1 storyline.
We've heard a lot about Polly. We've heard that she dated Jason. We've heard that she has all these secrets, but we don't really know much about her as a person. We don't know her personality. Are we going to learn maybe more about her relationship with Betty outside of this idea that she cares about her sister? Are we going to hear about their interactions?
Yeah, I mean, I think once Polly's introduced and you get to know who she is as a character, rather than just kind of like this person that everyone talks about that no one really sees, you see Betty and Polly together, and you instantly kind of can see why Betty was fighting so hard to find out the truth about what happened to Polly, because they're just incredibly close. But Polly I think is a lot. I hate to say Betty is stronger than Polly, but I think Betty is kind of, Betty's the younger sister, but she kind of takes the role of the older sister in between the two of them, in the sense that she doesn't let her parents manipulate her the way that Polly kind of let her parents manipulate her. But yeah, I mean, you do get to know Polly and you get to see their beautiful, sister relationship, and how Polly cares just as much about Betty as Betty cares about Polly. Yeah.
Now, one of the big themes of this season is kind of the gap between perception and reality. Talking about Riverdale as a town, talking
Right.
about Betty as a character. The idea of kind of the good girl.
Yeah.
Is it really interesting to you as an actor, the fact that like the definition of good seems to be shifting dramatically as this goes on? Because it's like at the beginning of the season you have this perception of Betty, but now, as you say, you're kind of becoming like this crusading journalist who's kind of working to, So to me, it strikes me as interesting that the definition of good in terms of Betty seems to be shifting.
Yeah, well, I think, like, just right off the bat with the comic books, people perceived Betty as the good girl, which meant that she was sweet and very innocent and a little naive and kind of let people walk all over her, and especially Archie. And being the good girl, she would always forgive him and go back to him the next day, and not really stand up for herself because she's a little passive aggressive. But in our show, Betty still is the good girl, but there's layers, and just like everyone on the planet, you can be good but have a bad side, and it's just a matter of, we made her a three-dimensional person, and yes, she is the good girl, but I mean, she has anger and frustration built up inside of her that she's pushed to the limit a couple times in our season 1, and that kind of boils over and makes her you get to see her colors, her different colors,